President Trump and APO's newly announced arms agreement with Saudi Arabia ratifies an Obama administration policy that has drawn criticism from a voluble, bipartisan minority of senators. Saudi Arabia, armed with American weapons, fought a proxy war with Iran in Yemen, where the government was overthrown by a rebel group tied to the Iranians. Allegations that Saudi Arabia has bombed civilians and committed other human rights abuses compromised what would otherwise tend to be unanimous U.S. support for the conflict. A $1.15 billion arms deal last year turned controversial, but that pact is dwarfed by the $110 billion pact signed Saturday. And what many of the armaments APO's re-providing to Saudi Arabia will help them be much more precise and targeted with many of their strikes, but APO's important that pressure be kept on the rebels in Yemen and Secretary of State Rex Tillerson told reporters following meetings in Riyadh. But Saudi Arabia has attacked civilians intentionally, according to Senate critics of such agreements, rather than by mistakes born of imprecise airstrike technology. And the country is on the brink of famine, in part because the Saudis have intentionally destroyed transit hubs and key bridges and blocked the delivery of humanitarian aid into Yemen and Senator Chris Murphy, D-Con, wrote in a piece published by the Huffington Post. And by selling the Saudis these precision-guided weapons, more not fewer civilians will be killed because it is Saudi Arabia and APO's strategy to starve Yemenis to death to increase their own leverage at the negotiating table. They see OULD and APO's to do this without the weapons we are selling them. And Senator Todd Young, R. Indiana, wanted Tillerson to make a series of demands on the Saudis designed to ease civilian suffering in Yemen, such as ending delays on humanitarian aid at a port city held by the rebels. And first, renounce any intention to conduct a military operation against the port of Hodeidah. And Young, a former Marine who sits with Murphy on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, said last week during a colloquy on the Senate floor with the Connecticut Democrat. And second, redouble efforts to achieve a diplomatic solution. Third, end any delays to the delivery of humanitarian aid caused by the Saudi-led coalition. And fourth, permit the delivery of much-needed U.S.-funded cranes to the port of Hodeidah that would permit the quicker delivery of food and medicine. I said it before, with more than 10 million Yemenis requiring humanitarian assistance, there is no time to waste. And instead, Tillerson and APO's counterpart rebuffed any charges of humanitarian abuses, denying that the Saudis carried out airstrikes against civilians and blaming the rebels for humanitarian aid delays at the port. And we have made mistakes, and we have acknowledged those, and we have investigated those, but we have been charged with things that we did and APO's to do. And Saudi Arabian Foreign Minister Adel Al-Jubeir said during a joint press conference with Tillerson. And but the image prevailed that we were waging an aggressive war against the country, and the Houthis were made to look like they were victims when it was they who started this, and it was they who lobbed more than 40 ballistic missiles at our COUNTRY and APO's towns and cities. It is they who have violated thousands of times ceasefire arrangements that were put in place. And Tillerson said the United States will continue to push for a diplomatic solution to the Yemen crisis. And I want to make it clear that we have efforts underway on both fronts. And he said. And I think the rebels in Yemen and those that have taken over the government in Yemen have overthrown the government have to know they cannot sustain this fight. They have to know that they will never prevail militarily. But THEY and APO's only going to feel that when they feel the resistance militarily, so and APO's important we keep the pressure on them. And